This is an unusual moment in American history, a moment I never thought I would see. We are in the midst of a panic reminiscent of the Great Depression, of stories my father told. We are at a moment when nobody wants to do anything, and that panic is spreading. The Fed is trying to reverse it with lower interest rates, the action taken today, and subsidies of all sorts that in effect would convince people to go back to business as usual. Floyd, I never thought I'd see this happen. What do you think?
Well, I don't know anybody who expected this to happen.
Yeah.
A lot of people thought there were going to be problems. But what has happened is it's more than people panicking, it's banks. The government has been trying for months to provide us with assurance that financial institutions would be okay. They offered lines of credit, then they bailed out a couple of them. What it's done is to just remind people that there were problems. And now we have a situation where the banks are scared to lend to each other. And that threatens to just bring the financial system to a halt. The government is doing what it can. They've learned the lessons of the 30s. And the lesson of the 30s was to put ideology aside and do whatever you can to bail it out. They didn't learn the lesson of the 20s, which was that when asset prices go crazy, you should do something about it. As they're trying to do something about this, they're not succeeding right now. Eventually, I'm sure they will, but it's scary.
I agree with you, Floyd. I think that we have learned the lesson of the 30s. And the difference between now and the 30s is that we have the lessons under our belt and we are acting rather quickly. It took the U.S. government 2 or 3 years, in fact, until Roosevelt came into office, more than 2 years into the Depression, before the government really stepped in and acted. So I'm wondering, Floyd, do you think that the lessons of the 30s will now limit the damage?
Well, the first thing they're going to do is limit the damage of the financial crisis. We've got to get an operating financial system, which we don't really have right now. Right. And we're going to have to find a way to recapitalize the banks. I think eventually we're going to see the government putting money directly into banks, buying stock. Ideology, we're doing things that we never would have considered possible even a few months ago. We have the government lending money to businesses all over the country, or announcing it will, without any kind of preconditions, without any kind of collateral.
That is really amazing. If you go back just 2 or 3 years ago, you had this powerful argument that government was the problem. So there is emerging from this an understanding that markets and government are married, whether they like it or not.
I think also, if this is Marxism, it's more like Groucho than Karl. We used to have a system where there were regulated players and there were unregulated players, and that hasn't worked. I think we're going to see a lot more regulation. To some extent, it won't be necessary. I think one of the reasons this happened is that the generation that went through the Depression, the people who were around in '29 to experience it, certainly as adults, are virtually all gone now. If you were 10 years old in 1929, you're pushing 90 now. So this was largely not part of our memory, and if this lasts for a long time, it'll be part of the memory of a lot of people.